I want to tell you about two dates in 1962. The first is February 4th. That's when Danny Thomas opened the doors of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. The other date is February 20th. That's when John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. He went around 3 times. It took about 5 hours. Those things happened nearly 60 years ago, and they were groundbreaking. But there have been tons of advancements since then, both in space exploration and pediatric cancer research. Enough advancements in both that someone whose life was saved at St. Jude is about to go where John Glenn went, a pediatric cancer survivor in space. That has never happened before, never even come close. Her name is Haley Arsenault, and she and her fellow crew members will be going around the Earth way more than 3 times, every 90 minutes for 3 days. I'm Jeffrey Reddick. I make podcasts for St. Jude Inspire. And right now on this first episode of St. Jude Mission of a Lifetime, we're going to hear all about Inspiration 4, how it came to be, what its goals are, and most importantly, the 4 people who are going to be in that space capsule when it launches. Stay with us. "2021 has been a busy year for space exploration. NASA landed its 5th rover on Mars in February. That's Perseverance. Curiosity, the 4th one, is also still wandering the red planet. And in May, they got company from a rover launched by China. But those are robots, and people tend to get excited about, people. Over the summer, the private companies Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin flew their owners up just over the space border. Another private company, SpaceX, has been launching astronauts to the International Space Station since 2020. And soon, they'll send 4 civilians farther than the space station. And that's what we're here to talk about. Let me bring in my colleague, Anna Berkedahl. She works on the video team that tells stories of St. Jude patients and supporters. Hi, Anna. Thanks for being here.
Oh, Jeffrey, thank you. I'm so glad we get to tell this story together.
So the Inspiration 4 mission got announced in February. What did you think when you first heard about it?
Well, it was kind of a combination of thinking about many things and really not knowing what to think at all. I mean, of course, the notion of an all-civilian mission to space that had the potential to raise $200 million for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital was incredibly exciting. And then there was a bit of a lull in the information coming through, but shortly after we learned that a St. Jude employee would be one of the crew members, and well, that just took it to the next level.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I quickly began to wonder, what does this space mission and St. Jude have in common? Because as a storyteller, I knew what was ahead for me. I would need to find that connection to tell this story. So as I began to talk to some of the key people involved, it started to become clear. I personally think the common denominator is the need for progress in science and humanity. There are 2 missions here, obviously, finding cures for pediatric cancer and then opening up space travel to all. And the goal of both really is to advance scientific research, so accomplishing what many would consider impossible, and to offer inclusivity to all, and to also shine a light in a world that, let's face it, after the last year or so, can sometimes feel pretty dark.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've had a chance to talk to each of the 4 crew members. Tell me a little bit about them.
We've got a very diverse crew that shares a passion for adventure. So Jared Isaacman is the mission's commander. He's a pilot and a businessman. He's the founder of the payment processing solutions company, Shift4 Payments. He gifted this mission to benefit St. Jude. Dr. Sian Proctor is a geoscience professor by profession, but she's also an artist at heart. Chris Sembroski is an Air Force veteran who works in aerospace manufacturing. Also, Haley Arsenault, she's a childhood cancer survivor.
We're going to talk about Haley throughout our next episode, but right now I want to dig into the bios of her crew members a little bit. And let's start with Dr. Proctor. I read that she's been an analog astronaut. What is that?
I had never heard about that before now. Analog astronauts agree to live in simulated environments on Earth that mimic life at a base on the moon or Mars. And while they're there, they conduct research. These are full-on habitats that recreate extreme space environments. And it makes sense, right? You have to practice for this sort of thing before you just, pull up to Mars, right? So Dr. Sian Proctor was a self-proclaimed explorer as a child, and she's really spent the rest of her life fulfilling that proclamation. She's now a geoscience professor who, on the side, has been living in those simulated space environments and conducting experiments to test and learn for the real thing.
Wow.
She was also part of the first Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation, or HI-SEAS. That was in 2013. They were set up at a volcano on the island of Hawaii, the Big Island. She has a special interest in food in space, which is really critical for long-term missions. And some of her missions like this have lasted as long as 4 months.
Space exploration is extremely important because solving for space solves for Earth. It makes us more efficient because space is all about efficiency in energy, in water, in food, in all of the systems. Because if you're not efficient, then you can die in space. But that efficiency level that we try to achieve, whether it's in space or on the moon or Mars in the future, that all that technology and stuff gets developed here on Earth, and then it comes back and helps us become more efficient here, so that we're not only just surviving, we're thriving.
Wow. Okay. So 4 months, that's a long time. But a flight to Mars would be even longer. That's like 7 months. And then once you get there, you still have to put up with your crewmates. I mean, group dynamics is a huge deal.
It absolutely is. Can you imagine? And yet, Proctor and so many others want space exploration to be for everyone. She believes we need to actively strive for what she calls a Jedi space. It's her acronym. It stands for a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space as we advance human spaceflight.
And so this is a message about how we are writing the narrative of human spaceflight right now as we go to the moon and we go on to Mars. And what do we want that to look like? How do we make space really for everyone, bring all of humanity along? And Inspiration4 is the perfect example of this.
You can tell that she spent a lot of her life thinking about space exploration as a whole and not just the technical side.
Right. And also getting there. She's actually tried the traditional route, and she came very close. In 2009, she was a finalist with the NASA astronaut selection process.
And you get that phone call and it's no, and you're just like, oh, you just feel it slip through your fingers. And then now that it's 12 years later and I'm that much older and wiser, to get this call and it be a yes is like, it's everything I feel like I've been working towards my entire life as an explorer, as a geoscientist, as an analog astronaut. It's all coming together.
And spaceflight actually runs in her family. Proctor was born on the island of Guam because that was when her father was working at the NASA tracking station during the Apollo missions in the late 60s through 1970.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when she was 19, her dad passed away of cancer, and she was determined to continue his legacy of advancing human spaceflight. So she's been all over the world, but she's never left the planet until now.
Wow. So that focus on space exploration, is that how she ended up with a seat on Inspiration4?
No, actually, it was her artwork. When her mother passed away 2 years ago, Sian found a box filled with postcards that she had been sending her mother over the course of 30 years. What she didn't know was that her mother had saved every one of them. That inspired her to design her own postcards with what she calls space art. And as part of the Inspiration4 contest, she developed a plan to sell her postcards. A little backstory. When Jared Isaacman was dreaming up the mission and developing this contest, he was aiming to get people in the capsule who could represent what he calls 4 pillars of humanity. Proctor's contest submission was that business plan to open an online store to sell her artwork using Shift4 Shop, which is Shift4's e-commerce platform. So Proctor will sit in the prosperity seat on the Inspiration4 mission.
Okay, so her artwork is inspired by space, and then she's been able to sort of activate it through this contest to get into the Inspiration 4 seat.
Yes, and the timing was perfect because she was making these space art postcards, and people were asking, "How do I get these?" And she really had no way of getting them out there. And so the timing was really great for her. It was something she was probably going to do anyway, but this really motivated her to advance the plan.
This is a Renaissance woman.
Totally. I mean, I don't know what her plans are after Inspiration 4, but I really hope more people get to know Dr. Sian Proctor. She is incredibly motivating. She's very charismatic and wise.
So you mentioned prosperity as one of the seats on Inspiration 4. What are the other seats?
Well, these 4 pillars of humanity, these core pillars that have named the seats, there's leadership, that's the seat Jared is in, and there's hope, that's Haley's seat, and there's generosity, that's Chris's seat.
Chris Sembroski.
Right.
So how does he represent generosity?
Well, Chris heard about the possibility of winning a seat on Inspiration 4 when he saw an ad about it during the 2020 Super Bowl. So he got online and made a donation to St. Jude. What happened after that was his friend who attended college with Sembroski actually won the chance, but he decided against going, and that's how Chris ended up getting the phone call. And Chris says he's been the recipient of a lot of generosity in his life, and he now wants to pay that forward.
Oh, man, what was that like to get that call?
I mean, I don't know if Chris was in shock, but he says when he got the call, his wife was upstairs getting their daughter ready for school. He was actually pretty low key when he let his wife know who was on the other end of that phone call.
I told her, I think you're going to ride a rocket. She said, what? My daughter's there. She said, that's amazing. That's cool, Dad. And so it's just an overwhelming experience to feel. And I had no idea that this was ever a possibility. And now that it is, I am super excited at the chance.
So you said a few minutes ago that Chris works in the aerospace industry. So he has some training in rockets, I guess.
He does, training and passion that goes way back. So when most kids were playing with G.I. Joe, Chris was building model rockets with his dad. And then in college, he worked on high-powered model rocketry. And then he served in the U.S. Air Force, maintaining our nation's fleet of Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles in Montana. And then there was this important moment.
Once you see your very first live, real-size rocket launched to space, there really are very few other experiences like that for me that give you goosebumps, that really just kind of change who you are as a person in a way.
I sort of understand a little of what he's saying there. I saw a nighttime launch of the space shuttle once, and it was indescribable. Video of those kinds of things it doesn't do the event justice.
Right. And being on one of those rockets was a dream Chris abandoned a long time ago. He talks about how difficult it is to get accepted into a traditional space program. There are more people in Congress than Americans who have been to space. And he says that's just not the way it should be.
I'm hearing some parallels to Dr. Proctor there with that feeling. The idea of, solving for space solves for Earth and making space exploration more inclusive for everyone.
Absolute parallels. Chris has actually been part of a grassroots effort to promote legislation in Washington, D.C. to help open the frontier so that companies like SpaceX could exist. And part of that means making it affordable to be in the business of spaceflight. SpaceX has been developing technologies for years now to make space launch vehicles reusable. That's so important for cost efficiency, bringing those costs down. And it'll help make space travel more widely available. And Chris says the reason to do that is that space exploration sends a message of unity.
When you look at Earth from above, you really get a good sense of what it's like to be a part of this precious thing we call Earth. And I know that experience is going to be incredible for me. And I hope to bring that message back, understanding that there are no lines on the Earth. There are no walls. We are all here together. We can all do amazing things if we show a little generosity and kindness towards one another.
Okay, so let's talk about the person who's going to make that perspective possible for Chris. Jared Isaacman. He came up with the idea for Inspiration 4. This is a successful entrepreneur. He's a generous philanthropist, but he doesn't really grab headlines. Not until now with this mission.
Right. And I'm going to just confess publicly right now to my unconscious bias about billionaires. I haven't met a lot of billionaires. Okay, I haven't met any billionaires. But when I was getting ready to interview him for the first time, I defaulted to the stereotype of an eccentric and maybe even out of touch or aloof human.
Yeah.
I mean, Howard Hughes, billionaire, aviator, right? My point of reference went right there. So I was really taken back by Isaacman's humility, his just truly down-to-earth vibe. That realness, that was almost more intimidating because it caught me off guard than if he'd been what I expected. My palms were sweaty. I had to kind of rethink everything in the moment.
So I know that you also talked to two of his brothers. What did they have to say about him as a person? I feel like siblings, those are the people who are going to know you best and know if that humility is real or not.
That's true. And his brothers, they're both older, but they say he's always had a deep sense of empathy for the challenges other people experience, even as a little kid, and that he's always been hardwired to be incredibly ambitious.
So Jared started the company that became Shift4 Payments when he was 16. His brothers must have been around for that.
He actually developed the concept for Shift4 in his parents' basement. I don't know about you, but at 16, I was more focused on getting a driver's license and what to wear to prom. But we didn't have a basement. So, that might be where things went wrong. I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, Jared was so confident in the idea, he decided he should drop out of high school. And that raised a little buzz among the family members. And that's when his brother, Mark, got a call from their parents.
And Mark, will you please call him and have a conversation and convince him to go back to high school? So, of course, I reached out to Jared and had a conversation. And, he's very convincing. At 16, he was very convincing.
The company, which was actually under another name at the time, took off so quickly that there wasn't a lot of time to push back, they say. And Jared eventually got his GED and a college degree later on.
But dropping out of high school to start a business, going to space, is he a risk taker?
I really think that depends on how you define risk, Jeffrey. I define risk as drinking the milk on the expiration date. So it's different with everyone. And you've got to realize Jared has a lot of aviation experience. He went from light jets to military trainers and started a private air force to provide Top Gun training with fighter jets. He's flown jets around the world. He's broken world records doing so. He would say no, he's not a risk taker. He calculates everything. And he'd say these are great challenges that he takes on very carefully.
I don't want bad things to happen. There are many, adventurous things in life that I've specifically avoided. I don't go skydiving. I don't fly helicopters. I don't think I'd be a good helicopter pilot. But the things that do draw my attention that I think I can conquer. I spend a lot of time studying and practicing to make sure that I can, accomplish my objectives and fulfill that challenge in a safe way. And I'm trying to bring the same thought, training, and preparation to what we're doing with this mission ahead.
So Jared is the commander of this mission, and he's had a say in who gets chosen and how they come together as a team. They were all strangers.
Yeah, until earlier this year, they had never met, and they've been going through rigorous training together now. They've also climbed Mount Rainier in Washington State. That was not so much mission training, but more of a bonding exercise, which I'm told is a tradition among space travelers, and a tradition that goes back many years. And while they all share a fascination for space travel, they really do all bring a different set of skills to the mission.
So how did Jared connect this mission to space with St. Jude?
He's actually done a lot of charity work connected to causes that directly benefit children. But he says Inspiration 4 was going to be on such a grand scale, especially as it relates to the fundraising component of the mission. And he says he couldn't think of any other organization he wanted to support more than St. Jude.
Benefiting an organization like St. Jude that gives others the opportunity to grow up and enjoy some of those, great challenges in life is paramount. So I think it all kind of gets woven together. Like, yes, you should take advantage of every minute of this. And while you're doing it, especially if it's something that's out of the ordinary or exceptionally challenging, then make sure that the cause you're serving is greater than yourself.
So it sounds like this isn't just about the chance to go to space for him.
Right. It's not just about the chance. It's not really even about being the first to conduct a mission the way he's conducting this one. It's about sending an inspiring message about driving progress in space as well as here on Earth.
The world has to benefit in an extraordinary way because, for as much as we'd like to conquer and drive progress in space, you can't ignore the problems of the world we live in today.
He says he's thinking about the message he wants to send to the world with this mission. And that goes back to those core pillars of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is also about the chance to go to space, and the implications that in the future, just about anybody could go to space.
He's put a lot of thought into that, and he says the world's going to be a more interesting place when we can all explore amongst the stars and seek out the answers to some of life's greatest questions.
I think a lot of us, whether you're a Star Trek fan or a Star Wars fan, imagine a world where we all kind of are, cruising around amongst the stars and exploring other planets and answering life's mysteries and such. So the more that everyday people can participate in that, I think it's a more interesting world. They're just going about doing their lives, and now they're going to have this amazing opportunity, and it will be the first step of hopefully many, many more to come.
The first of many. Well, we have one more crew member to tell you about, and that's Haley Arsenault.
These kids are, they're saying, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. They're seeing that they can grow up and that not only can they have a future, but it can be full of accomplished dreams.
We'll talk about her in our next episode. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
St. Jude Mission of a Lifetime is a production of St. Jude Inspire. We have reporting from Anna Berkedahl. We're edited by Grace Korziqua Evans. Louis Graham is the executive producer. You can find more about the Inspiration4 mission online at stjude.org/inspire. That's also where you can make a donation to St. Jude. We're also on social media. Just search for St. Jude. Be sure to subscribe to St. Jude Mission of a Lifetime so you can hear our next episode. And thanks for joining us. I'm Jeffrey Reddick.